I want to get into this. Letitia James.
I'm going to enjoy watching her squirm when they indict her.
She has several investigations going on. So Pam Bondi is quoted saying, "It's no fun when the rabbit got the gun." Republicans call for investigation into New York Attorney General Letitia James. The latest challenge to James' authority comes from Representative Ellis Stevanik, who recently filed a formal complaint alleging that James' prosecution of Trump was politically motivated and violated ethical legal standards. Stevanik argues that James' investigation into Trump's business dealings was predetermined and unethical, claiming the Attorney General had openly campaigned on her promise to take down a former president. It has been reported that the same pattern of obscured luxury that characterized her campaign. Oh, no, I'm going ahead. But it isn't the only controversy surrounding James. Reporters are now questioning her financial transparency after recent investigations expose a troubling pattern of luxury campaign spending and questionable accounting. A deeper examination of her personal finance discloses has raised new concerns about her property holdings and financial reportings.
Seems to be a Democratic qualification. You have to also be a con artist on the side.
Yes. So it says it has been reported that the same pattern of obscure luxury that characterized her campaign spending now emerges in her financial statements. One example, Virginia investment property she purchased in August of 2020. In her 2023 financial disclosure, James values the single-family home to $100,000 to under $150,000. Yet, mortgage records reveal that the same property carries loan totaling up to $400,000, potentially more than twice its declared value.
Accused Trump of?
Huh?
That's one of the indictment counts against Trump.
Oh, of
under. In other words, he supposedly overvalued his property. She undervalued her for same kind of purpose, nefarious purposes, she alleged.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the bank said we didn't get defrauded. We did our own investigation, but who did the investigation for the people? Now she got caught. See, she got something. So she's guilty of the same criminal offenses she had Trump indicted on.
Right.
Knowingly false statements on an application form or report or return. Great. And you wonder why the crooks are acting crooked in the streets when the people that are supposed to be in charge of law and order are being crooks.
And she also
say she's innocent until proven guilty beyond reasonable doubt. But I'd like to see her have to put that to test.
It says she's also under attack for defying Trump's executive order canceling sex change procedures for minors. President Trump's executive order aimed to prohibit gender transition treatments for individuals under 18, but James vowed to fight back, threatening to file discrimination charges against hospitals that refuse to provide these procedures.
Well, the point is he can't do anything criminal against her. He can just cut the funds off for the government, for the state. And she'll have to go to court, and it's likely to quickly get to the U.S. Supreme Court because it will be state against federal government, and therefore that'll advance directly to the U.S. Supreme Court. So let's put it to the test. These things need to be chopped off before they get to grow into strong, well-rooted weeds.
And it says in December 2022, GOP lawmakers demanded an inquiry into her handling of sexual harassment allegations against her former chief of staff, Ibrahim Khan. Critics argue that despite James' vocal stance on women's rights and accountability, her office downplayed the scandal, raising concerns about whether political consideration influenced her response.
Hmm.
New York Republicans, led by Congresswoman Nicole Malatakis, called for U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland to investigate James allegedly leaking unredacted tax documents from Nikki Haley's nonprofit Stand for America. Leaked financial records later published by the media outlet led to accusation that James' office had misused confidential tax records to target political opponents. She got a lot of dirt on her.
I know it. She needs to be in jail. I mean, she's innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, but I mean, I think they need to put her to the test. Set an example. People in high places need to act right.
Also,
Then there are all kinds of crazy rumors that people spread around anyway irresponsibly. So that needs to stop. But that's liable matter. Sometimes it's not worth the trouble. But this is just inexcusable. This is why we have the Bill of Rights to prevent this from happening. And for some reason, the Democratic Party thinks it doesn't apply to anybody but their opponents.
right.
So they give a classic illustration. And I love the new term for it, lawfare.
Right. Now, Cuomo, so those are those one, two, I just named three investigations. Now, this is another one by Cuomo, the former governor of New York, because he was pushed out right after COVID. He was forced to resign. So Cuomo sues New York Comptroller Office to use taxpayer money in a lawsuit against Letitia James. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo is suing the New York State Comptroller Office to get taxpayers to pay his legal bills for yet another lawsuit Cuomo filed against the office of his political nemesis, State Attorney General Letitia James.
That's if he wins. Those are his part of his requested damages. It's appropriate.
If Cuomo were to prevail, it would raise the state's legal costs for Cuomo-related scandals above $60 million, figure released by state controller on March 10th. Cuomo wants the state to cover the cost of his legal battle to get videotapes and unredacted transcripts of interviews the Attorney General office conducted while investigating the then governor for sexual harassment.
Legal fees have gotten ridiculously expensive, and what I see being delivered isn't worth it.
Right.
But there it is.
But considering with Fannie Willis, the state of Georgia passed that law that defendants can sue for legal.
That's to end the sovereign immunity for that particular situation. I think that's appropriate. That will cut down on the lawfare, but then again, it really doesn't deter the particular office holder because they don't have to pay it. The state does. Now, one thing that needs to be watched out for is a lot of this stuff that is being alleged against Fannie is personal, so she should not be allowed to have the state handle her cost and attorney fees. She should be required to pay it out of her own pocket.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, exactly. So, and also
there is a deterrent factor to it, and you're not much deterred if somebody else has to pay for it.
Right. And so I think that maybe Cuomo, former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, he sees what's going on in Georgia. And sometimes people use those situations, to try and push for their own status in their own state, to help, I guess, get their legal bills paid.
Well, that's always been the case.
Okay.
Trying to do that, but you see, the point there has been, you can't sue the state unless they allow themselves to be sued. That's what they did down in Georgia. They said, we will waive sovereign immunity. You can sue us. You cannot sue the sovereign unless they have granted permission. Sometimes on things like, let's say, the traffic lights malfunction and there's a horrible pileup at an intersection, well, the state has subsumed the exclusive responsibility for the traffic control. So courts have held that kind of thing is assumption of the responsibility and waiver of immunity when you become the exclusive entity in control of something. To show you how bad it is, the city around here hired some mentally retarded people to work with the sanitation department. And in front of this elementary school, there was a huge pileup of dead leaves that were blocking the grate that went down into the sewer. So the mentally retarded folk that the city had hired decided that the way to solve this was to remove the grates. So what happened is they did this Friday afternoon, and on Monday morning, when the school children arrived, there were all of these leaves piled up. And as soon as 7 of them stepped off the bus, they fell down 15 feet, and there were multiple broken legs. But the city was held by the state and the Supreme Court to be immune because sovereign immunity dictated that. And they said you had to have given the state written, or the city written notice that this hazard occurred, and they had to have received it and not acted on it. But this was being done Friday afternoon. Event happened Monday morning. So all of these children got broken legs because of the obvious negligence, recklessness of removing these grates at a school bus stop, and the children falling straight down 15 feet because the leaves had clogged up the area that was ordinarily would have been viewed, and they just stepped straight off the bus, clunk, clunk, clunk,
But depending on the case, a state will allow you to sue.
They have to grant permission. There's sovereign immunity.
And that goes for the federal government as well.
Yeah, federal government as well.
Trump also revoked Letitia James' security clearance.
Oh, did she have one? Why'd she need
I didn't know that. I didn't, because she works for the state of New York. I didn't know that.
I didn't know why. I don't know why she had one in the first place. That, by the way, is probably going to be an element on the conspiracy charges that are going to fall on Fannie, Bragg, Smith, Willis, and others, because there's no need for them to have the security clearance because they have no business messing around with, involved in matters that require federal security clearances.
It says a memorandum has issued directing the heads of executive departments and agencies to revoke security clearances and access to classified information for several high-profile individuals: Anthony Blinken, Jacob Sullivan. We have Alvin Bragg, Letitia James, Hillary Clinton.
Wait a minute. Why the hell does Alvin Bragg, a state attorney, a prosecutor, have a security clearance? What for? Well, see, that raises a suspicion. Mm-hmm. If he has one, what kind of briefings has the Biden administration been giving him? And that says we have some secret issues here we want to keep secret. What are they? Because they indicate that there is a conspiratorial thing in this. You can call it conspiracy theory, but I'm talking about for a criminal situation. In other words, they've been exchanging stuff, classified information in DC to get Trump, and that becomes a conspiracy. I don't care who the victim is, that's a crime.
So on this list, as you can see, Elizabeth Cheney, Kamala Harris, Joseph R. Biden Jr., yeah.
Yeah, well, Kamala, that silly witch, she doesn't need a security clearance. She couldn't keep a secret off of a pack of bubble gum.
And so
gets drunk and goes out and spills it. By the way, I had some working men come up to me at lunch and said they like watching what we do on social media.
Okay.
And the positions getting taken. It was an eclectic one. It was multi-ethnic and racial. It included whites, blacks, and Hispanics. Mm-hmm. There were several groups, all happened at the same place, sequentially.
Well, just one last thing on this Letitia Bragg's thing. House Judiciary Committee legislative reforms to end lawfare by state and local prosecutors. So they had a hearing on Fannie Willis, Alvin Bragg, and probing by GOP lawmaker and Letitia James. So they had a hearing about, when you have these state DAs or attorney generals.
And when they have an agreement, see, if one of them had just gone in and gotten the grand jury to look at it and indicted Trump, okay. If they got this later on to say, hey, look, I see you return an indictment on him. What do you have? That's okay too. But what they did, according to what I think Wade has been talking about, is they all met up and said, how can we get him? And you see, when you do that, that becomes an objective and that becomes a conspiracy. In other words, a group of people agree on an objective. Even if that objective is done in a legal fashion, the fact that they have an agreement to do it becomes a felony. It is a conspiracy. For example, you have 19 merchants in an area and they decide that they're going to drop the price on a product. No big deal. But if they say we've got a new competitor, we want to run him out of business, so we're going to agree to drop the price, then that becomes a conspiracy. And it's also antitrust as well. Mm-hmm. And that cannot be allowed. In other words, if there is an agreement to achieve an illegal objective, even if it's done in a legal fashion, it becomes criminal. Mm-hmm. That's American law on conspiracy. A lot of people go around about a conspiracy nut. Yeah, there's a difference between being a conspiracy nut and understanding what a real conspiracy is. And we're looking at it. Bragg, Smith, the federal prosecutor, you might even bring Chu in on this, who said Biden was too senile to have a chance of getting a jury not be sympathetic to him. Bragg, you even might bring in Fox, state's attorney in Cook County, i.e. Chicago, Illinois. Mm-hmm. You got a lot of people here. So if they had an agreement, if they had meetings about how are we going to get Trump, or this is what we're going to do to get Trump, that becomes conspiracy.
Mm-hmm. Right. And like you said, why did Alvin Bragg have security in the first place? And that was one of the questions that this committee was asking, how can a state attorney, district attorney, why was he on some of these federal prosecution cases when it had to do with Trump?
What is the security clearance? What does he need one for?
Right.
If it's not, he can make that kind of determination for the state of New York. What's he need one for the U.S. government for? He's got no business in there any more than me and you, unless he's got some secret status. Is he some kind of side agent for NSA, CIA or something, or military intelligence? Right. Homeland Security. Oh,